Black Conversations Season 4 is proudly brought to you by Castle Milk Stout. The opinions expressed within this series are solely of the individuals and do not reflect the opinions and beliefs of the Castle Milk Stout brand. Please be advised, the following program contains views which may be triggering for sensitive viewers.
I'm Kensanim Kari. I'm an art curator, an artist, and an educator.
Mina nguzwelibanzi Songwane odabuka eMangwaneni Bigville ongwane ombulazi obelelide kuthiwa isango lasebukhosini alenqiwa abafokazana kepha lenqiwa inkonjane ngoba nazo indizela phezulu.
If you ask people who's Kokotineo, they'll tell you the Sangoma. But I don't just see myself as Isangoma. That's one thing I'm trained in. I'm trained in many different healing modalities that are anchored within my Africanness.
Gamalamu, Ngusiyabonga, Ngwekazi, that's the name my parents gave me. The streets aptly named me the only Scope Makatini.
Mna ndingumzwandile Bhala, ndizalwa ngumvala uDikela uNoni uYongose uNtswayibane wesizwe samaQwathi.
I mean, culture for me is about authenticity. Growing up as a child who never felt comfortable in their own skin because there were systems in place. There were programs that we needed to conform to that always demonized and denounced our authenticity, and especially my authenticity as a Black woman. So culture has been a way of life of returning back to my authentic self. And that's why it matters so much for me.
So I wouldn't call it culture, and why is it culture important to me? I would really say identity. The identity is important because the root of it all is the identity. From the identity, then comes the traditions. Then from the tradition comes the culture. So culture into yokugqibela, and it's the most interchangeable of these things.
To me, the word culture comes from the word cult. It's a way of doing things, not spiritual, it's the way of doing things.
Black culture and language are very linked closely because I do believe there's a very fine line towards it. And yeah, man, just something spiritual about it.
Ukuba umuntu omnyama ukuthi uziqhenye and be proud of who you are, where you come from. Even though thina as a youth singazi as abantu abamnyama ukuthi siphumaphi, most of us, we are here to learn about being a young Black person. That's what it means for me. Ukufunda ukuba umuntu omnyama.
This African, authentic African culture, Black culture, is there something else you coin it? Is there something else that helps you identify with it and has helped you walk with it as long as you have? Kanincokoleni ngalendo culture yabantu abantsundu.
You know, these terms and terminologies can also be quite limiting. And I'm remembering a conversation Gabanayo with a brother in the diaspora who met me through the socials because of the teachings. And Watigimi Goko, please do not move the word Sangoma from your profile because there's something powerful in that label. So I'm saying to remember, it was the label that was used to manipulate the authenticity of our identity. So when we do a reclaiming or taking back or reaffirming or coming out, we can't move away from that because there is so much coining of the demonization of that term Blackness. So if we're wanting to say, Guti, we are reclaiming, we can't move away from it. It's no, it's just we're not Black, we're brown. We're not this. And you see it, Guti, again, this is the manipulation tactics of keeping us trapped as abantu abantsundu. Uguti, no, move away. You're not Black anyway. You are brown anyway. You're not this anyway. You're that. But ukhohlwa ukuthi uthema uthi Satan wathi umnyama tata. So you can't then say, Guti, when I have to reclaim my Blackness, I have to be able to say, no, it's just spiritual. It's not African, it's that. But the very same things that were used and the words that were used are the words that are running in our consciousness. That's why we can still behave in a manner that's uncultured, because the program was instilled with the name Black. The program was instilled with the name African.
I've noticed like a pattern that's been happening. It's a pattern of reclamation. I think in America they do it with the N-word. They said, we're gonna take this word even though it was used to use and abuse us. And I do think there's possibility to do that with the word Black, you know? As much as for me, it's a very contentious thing. Again, like I don't wanna reproduce that violence. And I'm very suspicious of this sort of like reclamation. You know, taking a negative term and then trying to use it in a positive manner. It's something that we need to, it's understudied, you know?
Me, I take labels and titles and qualifications, all that stuff, not as something that uplifts, because all it does, that uplifts your status or whatever among society. Again, which I have an issue with, because it's still in the category of qualification and judgment and comparison and all the stuff, one thing against the other.
You know, language is the software of culture, and words mean things, you know, and I think we're in an era where words are starting to lose their meaning. People will say, this is that, this is not that, this is more than that, you know? And I think the first step is to get back to language, and it's to get back to listening. And listening is not just about the oral, right? About the oral, about hearing. It's about stillness. Now, when you find moments of stillness, you're on your phone. We rarely find moments of stillness to the point where in society, people are not listening to each other. That's why everybody is disagreeing. And I think listening is also a spiritual thing. You know, how can you hear your ancestors when you're doom scrolling? And these things are created that way. I mean, these technologies are created to monopolize your attention, because we do live in an attention economy. You know, so when somebody creates this thing, an infinite scroll, which didn't exist before, and the person who created it regrets it. They said it. They said, I regret creating this technology because I see what it's doing to humanity. I see what it's doing to people's attention span. How can you meditate? How can you connect? How can you listen and process, you know, things that are happening inside of you, that are happening in the world around you, when you have this influx of information like we've never had in the history of mankind? And I think that has really led us off the path in terms of connecting to our cultures, one, because there's so many perspectives we're considering and measuring all the time. Even when we talk about authenticity, what does it mean to be authentic? If we talk about Black, what does it mean to be Black? You know, if we talk about culture, what does it mean? You know, and we mustn't be lazy to define those things, because I feel like sometimes we hurry through these things that, man, those things are clear. They're not clear. You know, they're not clear. They're never clear.
And they stay evolving through the time.
And they stay evolving.
But Tanzania, I also feel like, the same way when we are defining a Black culture, we want to be dogmatic. Right? So some of the utterances you've made is being dogmatic, thinking, you know, downloading information. Most of us who are sitting in this panel is through those platforms where people were downloading and they reshared and they set this insight here. So I think for me is that even when you're looking at Black culture, is where do we apply discernment? You know, where do we see what is the truth for us? Because umuntu angati yisiko or culture yami, but is that culture enabling? Because the authenticity of Blackness is centered around systems. So when we say we holding culture, is that how is that culture? Because culture is a way of life. That's what culture is. And the way of life evolves all the time. But what is in the center as we evolve, I can't be harmful. In the name of culture.
For sure.
Right? Then there's traditions. Right? Traditions are the principles and the norms. So for me, it's very important, let's be discerning when we're talking about Black authentic culture, because about something that's not a copy. But we'd be lying to say everything, it's the original. We'd be lying and saying, we as Africans have never traded before, and some of the things that we've heard is part of our trading. Because I think sometimes when we speak about these things, it's either or. Don't do this and don't do that. And that on its own, it's where we've moved away from our culture, because now we're becoming dogmatic, and that's religion. Even in African cultural practices, we're not realizing that actually we're applying religion, but we say it's an African culture.
Stay tuned for more moments to savor. Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness. The meaningful dialogue of Black conversations is fueled by culture and Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness.
And I know it's important for these conversations, for these exchange of intellects and experiences and backgrounds. Ngokba, I'm from Port Elizabeth. The things that I did in my life, I never thought I was going to do those things. I never thought I had the capacity to do those things. But you know what changed me is when I saw someone doing those things.
Yeah.
The reality only exists when your mind enters it. The brain and doesn't know how to perceive reality. It only knows when your eye recognizes it. Ukuba iliso lakho alijonga ngapha, that thing to your brain and your reality does not exist. It limits you in your scope of dreaming materially. You don't see umuntu with a mansion. You don't see, you know what I mean? So it limits you. Now imagine that spiritually. The person or the people that changed me to become more of an African were actually Americans, and it was hip hop. Because I was so in love with them, yet I realized listening to their music that they knew more than me. And I was so ashamed. I had to go run back and go study myself, not worrying about Africa, and Egypt, and Ethiopia. That in Dwana, you haven't even been to your grandfather's grave. But you fly to New York, you're telling Jordan. Sis on you, literally. So walking that road back, you know, then people like you guys started showing up on my timelines, you know? So I also want to thank you guys for being the people you are for people like me to find confidence in moving forward and knowing that what I want to achieve spiritually is as attainable as what I wanted to achieve and have achieved materially.
As much as to us who maybe manje sesivuleka amehlo sihluzekile, sizothi hayi umpetho singayenzi lama definition, ukhohle ukuthi the most powerful weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the medulla oblongata. Izulu leli. Right? The heaven that we're supposed to be seeking is this. So when this has been captured, and which is besides this that was captured, it started with the capturing of this.
People are moving towards indigeneity because we realize that, you know, we're colonial subjects, and that what we were given doesn't legitimately resonate with us or where we come from or our ancestors, you know? And I think we can benefit so much from connecting to our ancestry, connecting to our origins and where we come from, you know? The West has failed, you know, in creating a better world.
Everything that, you know, was disrupted is remembered. That's why Black people are remembering who they are.
Eventually there's evolving, meaning the returning, right? To evolve is to return, because we're not creating a revolution, because it's not in our nature to be aggressive, but it's in our nature to return to truth. We are doing that because we understand that the narrative that we've been taught about who we are has not really served us. That's why there is a lot of struggle within Black communities. There's poverty, there's poor leadership, there's broken families, there is violence within our system. There's a lot of misalignment, and we are not able to see progression like how other races have seen. It shows that the authenticity, which is our culture, the authenticity of who we are, has not really been in the forefront. And that's why there's this evolution of like, there must be some gems, there are pearls in who our people were, because we wouldn't be if it wasn't for them. So there's something to travel back to and see what are those pearls, what is the golden that is in our skin that really has to speak true to the power of who we are as Black people.
And ngendlela izinto eziqhubeka ngayo right now, coming from, I'll say, like that period of the after Y2K, after the 2000s, when we were like heavily globally influenced and we were trying to be other things, not really knowing ourselves. Now, I feel like we've done that walk, or some of us, most of us have done that walk, and we are coming back now to understanding that nothing out there, there's nothing out there for us, you know, everything is within us and around us. So I do think that Black people are coming back to themselves, and I'm really, really loving it.
So when this has been captured, so in order for it to be rewired, there must be a patching out. So we can't be looking at it because, Tina, we are at a certain level of our journeys. They must question these things, because otherwise culture becomes brutal and abusive. Culture has enabled the continuation of actually isms and schism in the name of culture. And finally, because singeke sithi hae yilaba ba captured ngoJesu yibo ba reject culture. Nathi ngemikhuba yethu, in the name of culture, we've perpetuated things. We've had people defend things, no, but it's culture. We've had our parents get away with murder because it's culture.
100%.
We've had uncles get away with rape because it's culture.
100%.
You see what I'm saying? So we need to be able to do those things, right? We must question, we must ask these terms, because the power of questioning takes us back to the state of curiosity. And for me, my journey was the asking of the questions.
For sure.
When you start to ask the questions, and it becomes nonsensical. Yeah, understand? To those who feel good, no, Mara, you must know the truth. This is the thing. But when I was asking Ekaya, no. What? Umama uyashaya. Umama wami uyashaya. Bonke bayashaya labafazi. Bazongitshela ukuthi apha unglobolile.
Sure.
And I was like, I know. Lobola, if this is what I'm signing up for. You understand? But what was that? Lobola was a cultural practice. But then, how it, because culture is man-made, that's one.
For sure.
So it means it's got its flaws. For sure. And it's got its errors. And anyone in a position of power at that time can make manipulate it. This is culture.
There's an issue for me. There's an issue of those who have enough information about a particular subject to think that they are right, and those who have so much information about a particular subject to know that they are wrong. So it's levels of understanding. Now, you cannot, like, because of a decision that I took, that didn't have the information that you have. When it had this information that you have, which I had no access to at the time of making the decision, that decision was made with the amount of information I had at the time of making the decision. So we're wrong. No, but right. Decision. So I don't have a wrong and right. I don't have a good and bad, because everything is relative.
Now we are here. We are defining Guti, what is Black culture. Can we also say, Guti, we in our culture as well, we've actually moved away from the authenticness of things.
I think that's why we are discussing it, because we have moved away. We need to see where we went wrong, see how we've deformed the definition, see if the definition was the right one, and then go to find out what is actually the original definition. And most of the time, African languages were a doing word.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So once sisibuyele kola lwimi, nani ngumXhosa, omnye ngumZulu, ngumTswana, izawuba lula into for us to get to the root of what is actually our culture by virtue of what our language says. Then we can practice it. Yabo?
Stay tuned. More rich moments await. Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness. The conversation continues on Black Conversations. Proudly brought to you by Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness.
Culture is affected by time, and it's influenced by time. There's a moment in our history where a certain thing, when you do it, it was taboo, right? Then we moved from that. As an example, I grew up, even though it's another era, when people had left the rural areas, they are now in townships. I grew up in Soweto, Orlando, where I witnessed Indlovukaz hating people who were not hitting them. You know, calling them weak. Windoda enjani ungangishaya. Uyayithola leyo nto leyo. That was the culture that was alive at the time. You can't say that was wrong because it was demanded by Indlovukazi. Do you understand? It's always influenced by time. What time are we in? You know? And what are the dictates of that time? It's forever evolving. Like amakhosi before mewehamba. Ukhona umuntu omele abe umqamelo wenkosi. Do you understand? Now ayisenziwa leyo. Kuyaphashwa kukhulunywe zonke lezo zinto.
We must also have the uncomfortable conversation because they're going to be an invitation to be on a quest of really finding iqiniso langempela. Ngihlukumeza ile nkulumo ukuthi emakhaya kunelentuzana kune culture angisho ukuthi ayikho, but it's also distorted. Because there is a culture emakhaya. Right now, when we look in rural areas and we're talking about the high numbers of sexual abuse in children, kusemakaya, it's done in the name of culture. Kuyatwala, they've distorted into yokuthwala. Ngikhuluma ngalabo abafuna umnotho. Ngikhuluma mina nawe, peers who love each other, right? That was the culture. And our families, because they had to dictate and have an input into whom we marry because it affects how the family systems function, we would elope. But manje, we've got 12-year-olds and 9-year-olds who are being traded off by imdeni. But hayi culture yethu. So if we're going to look back and think everything back is utopia.
Manje emakhaya mawenza lokhu uyaboshwa. Do you know that? Yinto beyenzeka. Siyavuma. Kepha manje zonke igodlo they know ukuthi that thing should be discouraged. And then nakhona lento yokuthwala yapresentwa ngenye indlela because ipresentwa umlungu whilst they are attacking our culture. Do you understand? Ukuthwala originally bokuvunyelwana. Bokuvunyelwana nomuntu ozwana naye. Sometimes I'm trying to explain it la isuka khona. And remember ukuthi culture that dictated in life at the time was that awukwazi ukungena indlovukazi ungayishadanga. It was a crime. And i-crime mowenze leyo nto bowuthuka ontanga bakhe, you've insulted all of them. A good example, inkosi. Unkosi usenza ngakhona.
Yeah.
Wangena uNandi bengakaqedi. Do you understand? Wasuka ontanga bakaNandi and went and revolted at the gate and demanded ukuthi inkosi bageze because it's taboo ungena umuntu ungakamshaya.
And you're the king, you're supposed to be the exemplary.
Example. Do you understand?
There's no either or. There's two sides to this. There'll always be the bad side of this thing and the good side of this thing. We already know the bad sides. Absolutely. This is why we are here. Absolutely. What I want us to really put a magnifying glass on, because these kids don't know the good side. They don't know the origins of it or the reasons why it started. Right? Because if they know the reasons and the roots, then they'll be able to practice it because now they have an affinity to it and it comes with a knowledge. The only thing we know now is the results of us not practicing the right culture, which is no,
Togos. You see, what guided our community? Before we had what is called the rites of passage. Sonke isigaba siyathwaselwa.
Yeah. From
1 to 7. Mawufika ku-7 bakuhlabela imbuzi. Now we are entering esinye isigaba. From 7 to 14, 14 to 20 something, until uzunikezwa i-permission ukuthi hayi manje sewukhulile abafana bangabheka. Do you understand? So okwamanje, the dislocation of that structure, this is what brought confusion in our lives. Because everybody decided for themselves and umntwana akasakhuliswa i-community. It's all about individualism now. Kanti before, umama meye ngangibona ngime nentombazana, even though lo mama is not my biological mother, will give me a beating.
Sure.
And angikwazi ukuyoripota ekhaya because mengifika ekhaya bazongishaya more. Bowenzani. Do you understand? This is what kept harmony. So for us to be able to go to that authentic culture, we need to go back there. Even in these concentration camps we call townships, we have to impose it because it was like that before.
Yeah.
You know, mina ngikhule ngazi ukuthi ngeke umfana ona 11 years athatha ugwaya bheme phambi kwabantu abadala. Le ngane zenza kanjalo these days. Ingane na 15 ikudlule nje ibhema. Why? Because umama wayo mengayidiscipline uyongibophisa. You understand? So for us to be able to reconstruct, we have to reintroduce the ways, the structure that was there before the colonizers came.
My point is not to disagree, but my point is to also state, as much as we, Tina Ngazi, but look at the conversations that are happening in social media. It's still the black man against the black man and the black woman against the black. So, yes, you see, we can say, no, but people know what's wrong. But we understand, Guti, what is culturally wrong in how we go against each other. Scoop, uzoba right, ngeke sikhulume ngawe. Yenza one mistake, you understand? Then everyone comes up against you. And who is coming up against you now? It's us. So what is the culture that has been breeded right now because of what has happened? There's something that has, there's something that has happened that has informed how we are, but it's informing how we're becoming. Hence, we've got kids who now think, we know, yebo, you can't, but you can't do it because we understood who was this person in our life. So all I'm saying, it can be good. Oh, let's just bring things back.
First and foremost, I want to talk about acculturation, which is what we've been talking about. You know, in arts, we have this thing called aesthetic acculturation. And it's when a bunch of artists see another group of artists doing well in a particular style, and then they follow that style, right? So people see people moving to the city and do better in life. They move to the city in the hopes that they're gonna do better in life. But the architectonics and the design of this place is not optimized for your spiritual growth. I promise you that. I promise you that this room, the way it's so square and all these corners, does not allow for an efficient flow of energy. That's why Dumba, you know, you get what I'm saying? Because energy can flow in those spaces, right? 100%. So moving away from, Baba was talking about moving away from the line to the curve, because everything in nature curves.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for more moments to savor. Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness. Culture is the thread that weaves together the stories of Black conversations. Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness.
With the knowledge that we know individually or collectively, because we spend a lot of time, we are wise enough now, Tina, to know that we have to spend time amongst people like us.
Yeah.
Like our time is spent where it's going to come as an investment, ezoba ne reward. We're old enough to understand that. So we almost think sometimes, and I know it happens to me, you just generally think that people just know the information you know. And they don't. Some of our age group don't know the information we know, right?
You know, we're talking Black culture here, right? You know, the relationship that Black people have with, for instance, money. And I'm not saying to you resources, I'm talking about money. It's different to the relationship that white people in general have with money, okay? Tina, haikufuneka ndiye finance school ndiyofunda ngale mali, okay? But bona belungu nje beyazi nje le mali nendlela yokusebenzisa, it's a culture to them.
True.
Sure.
That's true.
Sure.
How they relate with money is from home, not just Pakla classroom. Okay? So by your fund, as I was making this example outside, but in music, I'm not expecting what I know, whatever. I know because of fundelepa. As I'm not fundeleyo, I'm not going to make music for me, but I use them as tools in order to have a better expression of what it is I'm trying to present. Okay? So Abelungu have, I'm really generalizing everybody, okay? They use those things as tools. And the phayana kuzawufunda ke zonke ezaa zinto which I don't have time for. Bakhona abantu abayifundisayo la. Those are just the basics of how to handle this thing within a structure. But how you understand Tina, first thing you do, Joe, it's across, not like, hey, why Kwaito stars? No, soccer stars also, once they start making money, but taking moto,
it's a fear-based relationship we have, because I think even it's what I was alluding to earlier on. But the platform as well must start to interrogate, like how you are interrogating the money issue. Remember, the rewiring of our brain is to help to make us feel and remain in failure. So even with our relationship with money, it's fear. Even if you're an accountant, there are accountants who are in debt. Technical skills, right, will not make you heal things that have been indoctrinated psychologically. Because there's a difference between intellect and wisdom.
Absolutely.
And what we retain when we speak about going to authentic black culture is understanding which our wisdom is anchored in our spiritual identity. And that spiritual identity, because it's been demonized, like you were saying, Zwai, I'm tired of always explaining myself and justifying my practices by quoting a scripture in the Bible. Because they understood that we remove the essence of who we are. We are spiritual beings having a human experience, but we've incarnated in this black body. So to give rituals to this black body, there must be things of our own that feed this body. So if we disconnect them from there, then anything is possible. And I think that's even our relationship with money. Money is spiritual. Money is spiritual, it's an energy. How we use that energy is always in fear. Noma ngizwana nawe sokuyifear ukuthi ukuze ungangishiyi fanele ngikubheje.
When we talk about going back to our cultures and our source of knowledge in their most authentic forms, as you said, Data, these places are emakaya. Someone was asking, like, what do I do if I live in the city? And I'm going to answer that before I throw it to the panel. It's funny, and it amuses me, and it perplexes me, and it flabbergasts me that when it comes to issues of blackness, we will ask so many questions about how do I do it, blah, 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 blah. But when it comes to us chasing the money, chasing our careers, even chasing a loved one or a potential partner, people have more gusto, people have more zeal, people have more moya and energy to even chase after things, and they don't know how they're gonna get there. They're just like, so you told them fana because I wanna be there. Sometimes with this life, as the secret says, you don't have to know exactly how you wanna do it. The most important thing is, do you know that you want to do it? The universe will arrange itself.
But Buga Kes, it is the responsibility of government to educate its own people. The work we are doing, umsebenzi we government, is the work that is supposed to be done by government. So it means, Uguti, we are led by people who are taking us astray. Because in China or Israel, you won't struggle to know about the culture of the Israeli. The president,
represents that.
oozes that culture. Do you understand? So our leaders are living a different culture, and they are assumed by this different culture. They have to come back home. This should be part of the education system.
Thank you.
Authentic history of the continent. So we njengoba sesithole liberation, we need to force it into our schools. It's unfair for these leaders to put us through this trauma. For a child of a 21-year-old who's ignorant about themselves, when you ask, do you know Bob Credo? Who's that? It's supposed to be here. They should be reading or learning about Bible Credo at school.
100%.
Hey, so I think, we should push for these leaders to do right by us.
The problem is that the people have changed, but the system remains the same.
No, sure.
You know, Albert Einstein says, you can't change the system from the very same mindset that has created it. And I think for me, we just have people who are occupying positions who are not called for leadership.
Power and influence. And they are ignorant about themselves.
Yeah.
And
So
about that,
where are they leading us to?
but there is no purely black that caters for all the
know
9
why?
languages,
You
that
know
focuses
why?
on us from primary to tertiary.
You know why? All our leaders and all our professionals have been fashioned by Western philosophy.
Danko.
So, the problem with education system, the people who have been fashioned by Western philosophy can never bring change because they don't know African philosophy. They need to go outside of their own system. The content is there. Tina Africa, we don't need any foreign content. We need to have boldness. As much as we have developed an affinity to visitors here, it's like at home. If the family wants to deal with family issues, all outsiders, they've got to leave. Until we do that as African people, we won't be able to go back to who we were and who we are as African people. As much as, how sad it might feel, for you to tell your friend, good, hey, we just want to sort out home. Can you please just leave us for a while? We'll call you when we are ready. But it's something that it's a necessity for Africans to do. And the whole world would support that because they know themselves they did it. They implemented it. That's why, all these other nations are solid, on the solid ground because culture was instilled in them.
Stay tuned. More rich moments await. Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness. Black culture is richer when you savor it. Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness.
The root of things is that we were first divided from nature. And as long as we have no reverence for nature. For this planet we're on and everything around it, we won't get anywhere. That's where it starts. That's where the real education is. Nature is the altar.
Yeah.
Nature is the
You're
altar.
very right,
If our children are divided from nature, that's why they put us in concentration camps. That's why they put us in cities. They want to separate us from nature. And that's why nature is so expensive.
That's why we can't have access
to
to
live
rivers.
close to, It's
Access
very
to
expensive
rivers.
to,
They
exactly.
now are part of an aesthetic of an estate.
Absolutely. The question of nature is connected to the question of land.
Yeah.
We should not ever retreat when it comes to the question of land.
Yeah.
You're right.
Ever.
Yeah.
Because that's where it started. That was the first division.
Yes.
That was the first separation. And once we're separated from that, there's no ground beneath our feet.
I love the point you made about nature. It's such a huge point, It's such a huge point.
What are we doing about the kind of world that we want to see? Or are we just going to sit by and spend as panels, till, I'm not going to say unless, I'm going to say until we're making a conscious effort in affecting what the information that our children are fed.
Yeah.
For as long as we say we are led by standards that are foreign to us and that are not part of us, we've missed the boat already. When the vision is intact or it's in line and it's truthful, okay? When we take the standards or whenever there's a particular question with regards to our country, and then a minister stands there, it's like, no, the system has worked in Sweden and France, like, hey, asimo Sweden more. There's so much that we have not addressed. Before you deal with that, and then there's so much racism we have not addressed. We have not addressed the colored question. We have not addressed so much. Now we've become a reactive society and a reactive leadership, reacting to things that are catching us by surprise. There's no leadership, we are managing. We are reactive, we are not proactive. But if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. We are falling for anything right now. So until we are clear about what it is, be clear and gather and decide what we actually want and who we are and what is best for our country. Not just in democracy, because it's democracy everywhere else. Now, I democracy Africa. Do you know we're the last ones? After all those examples, now I spanang.
So how does a kid or a person that has a lot of cultures around them, keep it? How do they work it?
Chief, it's simple. Ubuntu.
Showcase.
It's not to do Xhosa culture, whatever. Ubuntu.
Ubuntu,
Practices.
yes.
Got you. Got you.
It's all about parents. My son, he's 14 this year, but he had a beef at school. Starting with the teacher, right? He goes to school to explain to them about the African calendar. The teacher, because the teacher doesn't know the issue of the calendar, then opposes the silo's view. And the other kids opposing. And he tells them, no, mina ekhaya siyaphahla.
Yeah.
You know, we are rooted in the African culture against a mob of children that are either Muslim or Christian. Do you understand? So it starts at home.
Sure.
Umntwana needs to see you live it, right? True. Then it's internalized from experiencing at home. It becomes a culture of choice, ekhaya. That's why we set up a movement, about Great Empire of Kemet. We have a YouTube channel to give access. Like in our channel, there's so much content. Content engaksusa from zero, so that you better understand. So, ingane go to such, movements where you can learn about the true history.
Everyone has a role to play for the health of the ecosystem. And to young people is to say that once you don't understand your identity, it will be defined by the rest of the world. You will stand for everything and be a nothing.
And also a role.
No, yes. The important thing for me is that understand what your intentions are important. Because my work is in the diaspora. Yes, my work is... Yeah. No, I work nabantu abamnyama who are in the diaspora. No. If you are in the diaspora, you were moved from your African language, then it means you are doomed. No. It's incredible point. If you are moved from here through slavery, when go to you are melanated. Does it mean then this is my position, because sometimes we can focus on the aesthetics and not the intention. Because bakhona baphahla azibize zonke ithakazelo sithi lo muntu ujulile kodwa inhliziyo igayibos. So my work is in the people in the diaspora, because I need to work with those people. These are the people who are saying we are paying homage, we are coming ekhaya. So they can't come ekhaya because now they don't have the language.
No, sure. Remember, Guti Waisinto Astolikwa, right? What does that mean? It means, Guti, when I say things ngesintu, it will be difficult for me to capture the essence of what I'm saying in English. So when I then translate it, it really loses the meaning, right?
Because translation.
In translation. Then, Maupasha, especially Maupasha, you are trying to create the necessary vibrational frequency that your ancestors are familiar with.
So what do we do with the people in the diaspora?
No, lababale. We need to go to Tina Sibe rooted, on who we are. Bona bafunde. There are so many of them that I'm in touch with. Some members of the Great Empire of Kemet in America are asking, when are you starting Zulu lessons?
But right now
because
they can't speak
they
it.
long for that vibrational frequency that they hear from Africans. So akusho ukuthi mawuthunjiwe ufika le kuma Portuguese mele uphahle ngesiPortugal.
So are you saying we wait, Baba?
No, I'm saying communicating with the creator is there. Do you understand? But I'm saying Ndlovukazi Tina la we can't agree ukuthi sila when we are not colonized. we must then siphahle ngesilungu.
No, I'm saying ukuthi senze njani because we can say Tina Sila, kunabantwana who right now can't speak their mother's tongue. Ohlushwa yingulo, izinto zakhe asihlangani. So are we, no, but yes, mele bafundiswe mara kufanele kube nesiqalo. So sithini. Oh my God, you know, the thing is that we think ukuthi mesikhuluma ngabangasekho amadlozi sikhuluma ngenyama. Umuntu mekese eba idlozi, it means they've transitioned from the physical to the spiritual. So mesikhuluma ngomuntu omoya sithi bayazi bayezwa, it means bakhuluma amalimi ahlukahlukene. And also sicabanga ukuthi idlozi lo washona nge-1856 sakhuluma ulwimi lakubo kanti nengane saceda ukundlula mekafaka ezweni lamathongo uthi nina niyazi ukuthi nishiye kwisimo esinjani. Bokoko nabomkhulu, you have left me without understanding my indigenous language, but my intentions are pure. Because for me, spirit does not have barriers and boundaries. Men have created these confines, and men I mean by human beings, not spirit. Melufunde before kal.
Oh, no.
Then where do we start? That's my question.
Communicating.
But where do we start?
Ukuthi namadlozi abo are understanding ukuthi bathunjiwe.
That's my point, exactly. So then nothing to
ba aware ukuthi labantu are coming with a different vibrational frequency.
But that's what I'm
because of their situation.
Because also if we
Not
understand
us here.
it's an intention.
It's intention.
If we understand even language, as nice as it is, it's also a man-made thing.
Yes.
So I can communicate with an ancestor and not even speak by virtue of my intention and vibration, no matter where I am and the tools that I have. I just want to say that as much as we are talking to you guys, I'm sure we are also talking to ourselves.
Yeah.
Xa uncokola, xa uthetha, now you can now start to see where you were right, where you've been falling off, where you need to intensify your efforts, and where you need to expound on your efforts. So I really want to thank each and every one of you as my panelists for being here. I want to thank Castle Milk Stout for giving us this opportunity. Doing this for a fourth year.
Yeah.
It's a lot of gusto that you guys are showing for the reconstruction of ourselves. We have to do it ourselves though. You know, we really appreciate you guys, but we know we have to do it ourselves. Thank you to the channel as well. Thank you to the crew. And I hope you guys really have learned something from this. And as again, nobody from Papa yes ngendlela yenu nina.
Thokozani.
Thank you.
Isthembu is not the prerogative of men. It was started by women.
Other women who are so judgmental about polygamy are actually allowing the honest cheater to be polygamist in secret.
One would ask, what is black love? It comes with a lot of expectations.
Now for as long as ukhulula penti, uskantena ka immaturity, ducking this conversation, ducking that conversation.
Black Conversations is sponsored by Castle Milk Stout. Savor Black. Savor Castle Milk Stout.